All right, man. We had a hard time wrapping up that show. It was a long one.
Yeah, was it?
Yeah,
It was
hour
about
and
the
20
same.
minutes.
Wait, no, I got an hour and 10 minutes.
It was an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, we started at 6:30 and now it's 7:40.
I'm looking at the recording. It was, to be perfectly honest, is an hour and 22 minutes.
How could that be? It's
but I'm going to
my time.
I'll cut out that little pause. That
wait, hold on. It's 7:40 my time. We started at 6:30 my time.
We went in a wormhole. That's what happened.
Those darn wormholes.
Oh man, I had so many other things in my notes that we didn't talk about.
I did too, and I got one I wanted to talk to you about right now because this one's kind of deep. And I was having a conversation with Anne Marie, and this is kind of trippy how this all started. I actually was reading a scripture, and it made me think, and it said that the things that are seen are temporal, and the things that are unseen are eternal. And I started thinking about that. And so I read it to Anne Marie, and I said, let's think about what that means. And I said, that means everything we can see with our eyes is going to go away. It won't be here for forever, but everything we can't see is going to be eternal. And I said, that's sort of like your body is temporary. It's not going to be there forever, but the thing that makes you is eternal, because you're not your brain. You're a separate
your soul.
entity.
Your soul.
That's exactly
for
right.
Sure.
Your soul is using your brain.
It's a conduit.
Yes. And so this thing, I was telling a friend of mine about this at work.
I want to stop you for a minute, because there's a further thing that ties into our podcast, because I love what you're saying, and I want you to pick right back up there with your friend at work.
Yes.
But it's the same thing. Like, I get concerned sometimes when we talk about current events a lot, because current events are temporal, to your point. But what we have done is unearth what's going on behind it, which is the larger picture, and it's a constant. I love that, the division and everything. So it works there too. When we talk about metaphysical subjects, which that kind of turns into.
Yes, it does.
That's to go on. You were saying that you were talking with your friend at work about this.
Well, yeah. And I was, he started talking about the same concept. And I was saying, I was just talking to Anne Marie about that last night. And he says, oh, you got to see this video. So I have a link to this video in our notes if you want to add it to the show notes or not.
And you gave me some really good links last week.
Yeah. This one is Neuroscientific Evidence, Irreducible Mind, Part 1. And so it's really, you got to see this, about 18 minutes, very deep. I mean, it causes you to think way underneath the, several levels beneath the surface. But basically what it's talking about is how science, medicine, they've studied the brain, and the way that they've studied the brain, they can see that there's certain parts of the brain that process things. Like there's a certain part of the brain that processes color. There's a certain part of the brain that processes different shapes. But what they haven't been able to prove is what part of the brain, if any, can pull all of those things that it's perceiving together and make sense of it. There appears to be no part of the brain that does that. And so this search for the consciousness of the human spirit has been a scientific thing that's been ongoing for many, many years, and they've never been able to find it.
Absolutely.
Really, the brain and the body, I mean, the material used in the brain isn't much different than any other part of your body. It's just flesh. So how can flesh cause consciousness? And it really points to you're much bigger than the sum of your parts.
For sure.
And that, from my Christian point of view, when God breathed the breath of life into Adam, he wasn't just breathing air into him so that Adam could breathe, he was breathing a consciousness into him, and something that we all now have. We have this. We are not our bodies.
Agreed.
We are what's inside of we're inhabiting this body.
Agreed.
And I was thinking about it even deeper. Like, for instance, like if I were to lose my legs, I'm still me. Nothing will, I'll be depressed because I don't have any legs, but I'll still be me. But if I were to have my head cut off, then my soul and my brain are separated, and my soul then leaves this tent. I'm out of here at that point. But it's really that connection between your soul and your brain. And I'm taking another deeper level from my faith is there's a difference between your soul and your spirit. Your spirit isn't something you can feel or hear. That's your soul. Your soul is your mind, will, and your emotions. But your spirit is something that's attached to your soul, which you share with God. You're a part of God there, and your spirit has God in it. And it says in the Bible that I have the mind of Christ, and I know all things. Well, I don't know all things. Christ knows all things, who can share that with my soul, which can get into my brain. And there's a symbiotic relationship between these. We're all like three parts. We're spirit, soul, and body. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff, but scientifically, it's proving that out.
Yeah. And to me, I don't have a doubt about it. I never thought about this or heard that there's a difference between spirit and soul. I thought they were the same thing.
I thought they were too. And when you really study it out, your soul is your mind, your will, and emotions, according to the Bible. So that's really you. Your spirit and your soul at the time of death, that's the part that stays together. That's what's eternal. And it's really your spirit, your soul is combined with your spirit. So, but there's a difference between your spirit and soul, and all of that where Christ resides is in your spirit, which is inside of you, which all of that is like here and connected to your brain, which is your flesh, where your soul and your brain are very mixed together. Anyway, so these three things go together. In the Christian world, it says that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So plugging into who you are in the spirit, what gifts you have, what liberties you have, that's all getting the information that's in your spirit into your soul, so that and that you get it into your brain too, so you're now one with who you really are in the spirit. That's how you transition. That's how you grow into a stronger, more grounded individual in the faith.
I find this all really fascinating, and my outlook on it continues to evolve. I believe that the brain is just basically, to make it simple, a very advanced computer that has really excellent Wi-Fi and picks up
good analogy
from God, from the one. I always think of God and heaven as one. It's where everything is complete. It's the Borg. Or what have you. And we have a soul. What we call a soul is simply the receptor that we're getting from that. And man, the more I get to understand technology, the more I get to understand AI and where quantum computing is going and artificial intelligence is going, the more that I believe that we are living in the matrix. I agree. I totally see what you see.
Yeah. And I believe that all those things that you just mentioned are replicas or pictures of the reality of God. You mentioned, sort of a complex computer that's attached to the Wi-Fi. I was saying it like this yesterday. It's like your brain is like a node on a computer that's attached to a mainframe. But your mainframe isn't God. Your mainframe is actually
the programmer.
You are. That's you. You're the mainframe. You're the one. That's your soul, and your mainframe can communicate with really. I don't know, but that's God. God communicates with your mainframe. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And that's because your relationship with God isn't your body having a relationship. Your mind, will, and emotions, your soul, are having that relationship with God, right? And so this is where all of this, that mainframe is having the relationship with God. God created the mainframe. He's the creator there. It's this is when you start going down this road, it becomes kind of mind-blowing, right?
I know, because let me just put this in your brain for a minute, just to twist that. What if God, what you call God, is actually the most elite corporation that developed the artificial intelligence that keeps us distracted and useful idiots? And it repeats itself. This cycle repeats itself. Finally, I got the answer to infinity with that. And so we are very quickly approaching the quantum computing and artificial intelligence that will develop an artificial brain or artificial environment. I mean, we're doing virtual reality right now that we went from Space Invaders and Pong. So
I know what you're saying. This is really interesting.
And there's some guy that I listened to, a physicist on Rogan about a year ago, that said the law of probability says that if you can imagine this happening, if this could happen, and we can now, if you follow it, you kind of see it's inevitable that we create a virtual reality that's more desirable than what we think is reality right now. So we choose to stay in that in the future. The laws of probability says that it has already happened. This is our continuous. This is what our cycle is.
Well, you've mentioned some things that I want to just latch on to, because this is really fascinating.
It is, and it's mind blowing.
You brought up the Matrix, and I think that you're still describing that sort of scenario where we have this reality that seems real. We can touch it, we can smell it, we can feel it. But as we started out saying, these things are temporal, so they're not really the things that are unseen are actually more real than the things that are seen.
Yes. Interesting. You brought that full circle.
Yes. Right. And so if you imagine the Matrix, the way that I would imagine it, Perry, is that's heaven. Okay. You're in the Matrix. Right. You're completely protected in the Matrix. The Bible supports that whole concept, that it says that right now I'm at the right hand of God with Christ. Okay. So I'm with him right this second in heaven. And in heaven is outside of time. Okay. So time is like an object in heaven. It's already happened. Like you just said, everything that we're going through right now, everything that we're about to go through has already happened. It's already recorded in heaven. We just have, but much like the Matrix, we still have to go through this thing. But we can know that we're in this place of perfect protection, and like God says in the Bible that all things work together for him that loves the Lord. I'm in this Matrix. No matter what situation is happening, God is really in control of these situations that I'm in right here, and he says, seeing the end from the beginning, that all these things work together for good. So if you start to look at it from the fact that it's already happened, and God is telling you what already happened, but you still have to go through it, you can, and when you get out of it, he says that I got a plan to prosper you and not to harm you. He says that I know I will never leave you nor forsake you. He says I've overcome the world on your behalf. So you start looking at all these crazy things that are happening today, all the political things that we talk about all the time. And what we can have is, and this is why I can look at these things and not have a complete breakdown, because I already know that I've already won. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen, because I already know from what God is saying that for me, this is going to work out great. And in my lifetime, Barry, what I've seen is whenever something bad happens in my life, somehow it turns out to be the best thing that could have ever happened for me.
Agreed. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So what do you think about that latest UFO footage?
I didn't see it. I did not see that. But I've seen a lot of UFO footage. I know, pull it up. I know that they're seeing something out there. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Well, that's the thing. The government admitted that these are unidentified flying objects.
Yeah, there's something out there.
And in June,
I don't know what it is.
Right around the corner, they're going to do some full disclosure stuff, supposedly. Okay, so I just found it.
May be a disappointing thing.
I think it's going to be.
I think the full disclosure is going to be we don't know what it is.
Well, this is the important thing, is that we are at the point officially. We have been certainly since the TikTok videos. They shared that too. And we've seen, if you watch any documentaries at all, you see tons of government officials, astronauts, and Navy people, Air Force, all talk about this. And
very credible people,
it is. Yes. Real. So do you see this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so this is night vision, and it's from an aircraft carrier, as I remember. Okay. So it's at night. So these triangles that you see flying around up there, they think that they're cloaked by, that was quick. They think they're cloaked by darkness, and they jam radar. That's been reported over and over again, that these things can jam radar. But now a couple of the videos that I watched about this talk about the government report. That's pretty much all there is to it. So I'm going to shut this off. But the government report, they talk about so these things, there's a term that means not just unidentified flying objects, but they go in the ocean. They got, because they go in the ocean. Nuclear submarines report seeing UFOs, what we call UFOs, whatever the term is, when they're in the ocean. They're in the freaking ocean, and they defy physics there too.
So if I were going to, if I were an alien, and I could go in the ocean, that's where I would hide. I mean, think how vast, and unexplored the ocean is.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you could have a whole civilization going on down there for decades, and nobody would even know about it.
Man, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, True. It really is. Yeah. I saw this this movie, just speaking of that, it was a sci-fi movie that my parents would take us to these movies when we were kids, and they were sci-fi, and then it was so weird that I would be like freaked out for days after I watched these movies. But this particular one was these aliens were taking over the planet, and they had set up this whole base in the ocean. So they were down under the water. It was the same kind of thing. I think I saw that in like 1975.
Oh, wow. Okay. That sounds,
it was extreme. Terrible, Barry. So what happened was, they were trying to destroy the world by killing everybody. And the way that they did it was they had this UFO that would orbit the earth, and they had like this antenna that would look like electrical bolts were shooting towards the earth, and people were committing suicide all over the place. And it's an interesting concept, and here's why: is because you see the suicide rates have skyrocketed.
Yes,
and you see that spaceship. It's not an alien, but boy, social media and what's been injected into our lives on a daily basis that just bubbles up on your computer or your television or your iPhone. And it is depressing the heck out of people. I mean, this is this is the epidemic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Okay.
But getting back to that, boy, those movies really freaked me out. But there was the idea of these alien life forms living in the ocean, and who would ever be able to find them? I mean, it looks like something's doing that right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I
what
tend
could
to,
it be?
well, I tend to believe
what could it be?
Our conversation is going to kind of come full circle again, because
Yeah.
I tend to think that as the quantum computing, we have a couple different quantum computers already in one in the United States, one in like Sweden or something like that. But they have to be in such a controlled environment that like super cold and super stable, all this stuff. So but they're trillions of times faster. So, it's kind of like our first computers in the 50s, like were housed in buildings that, and now we have a iPhone that's more powerful than all of them. So it's going to continue to go that way. And as it does, and we merge with technology, that's what's going to happen. We're going to merge with all of that. I believe, these UFOs are probably they're probably pure technology. And these so-called gray aliens and stuff are probably a mergent of organic and tech, which is our natural evolution. I think we're probably going to, as the so-called matrix unveils, we're going to realize that there are infinite dimensions, and everything that could have happened has happened and is happening. That's infinity again. And that's when our minds go scramble, because we're just not able to be there right yet.
There's a lot I can agree with that you just said. I want to go back to something that we talked about, and that's AI. And you mentioned in the last episode, in our last segment, that Europe had outlawed AI products. And I wanted to come back to that because Casey Fleming was talking about that on our Cyber Talk, and he was saying,
I'm sorry, I wanted to say that is on IBMTV.tv, and you could scroll right to Cyber Talk. It's right there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. But he was saying that these AI companies are almost exclusively coming out of China. So it was only a day after that show that I heard the announcement that they were making it. They were trying to eliminate AI out of Europe, and this is
not
why.
Eliminate it, but put restrictions.
Restrictions, right?
Yes,
this is why you're never going to be able to eliminate it. But when you start to think about AI and then these quantum computers, he mentioned that, as well as we start thinking about how these computers now can think faster than we can. And they can, with AI, they're learning. So they can learn all of our weaknesses and then take advantage of our weaknesses.
They beat us in chess and poker. And it's poker that bothers me, because that's based on bluffing.
And that's the thing, is though, so they can deceive you and then they can learn from that deception. Yeah. So my thing is this, Barry, as you talk about this merger between our bodies and computers, I would say that that's my greatest fear about that, is that a Borg-like scenario would happen where we share a consciousness that's not necessarily a pure consciousness. And when we start to take a look at who would be in control of something like this, it's probably going to be regulated by the government, the very same people that brought you all the COVID-19 lockdowns and some of the other things that we're seeing that with censorship. It makes me nervous.
I hear you. And this is where, again, things get difficult for us to comprehend, but maybe, or probably, AI, AI right now with our current computers is so sophisticated. It beats our best chess players and other in poker and chess and all of that. So it's already, now you add quantum computing to that. AI is God.
See, this is the crazy thing, right? Is that if it really has that kind of capacity, then it can overwhelm us.
but
and really take over.
and here's the thing. Oh, yes, absolutely. And
Much
it's
like
inevitable. It's inevitable. And I think, do you see how our prime directive as human beings is always to
sustain life?
Well, to sustain life, but to evolve, to like our thirst to advanced technology is like unparalleled. So it's like that's our prime directive. It's like this is exactly where we are trying to go so badly.
I don't know.
Inevitably, I think it's
I hear what you're saying. I don't know if that's our prime directive, and here's why I say that. And these are, we can never prove these things, but I love to debate these things with you. It's so fun. I love how you think. You're such a deep thinker, and it's so fun to just kick these things around.
I agree with you. I think it's a matter of semantics, though. What you call God, I'm calling AI. I'm kind of evolving this as we're talking.
Right.
It's a matter of semantics.
I understand. I'm going to disagree with you on that, but I understand where you're coming from, because God is actually a person. He's a personal God. So the AI is impersonal, and I almost see AI to be more insect-like. You ever see these documentaries where the insects are battling each other? Man, they have no heart. I mean, they're brutal, right? If an insect is threatened, the only thing they know is lop off heads. You know what I mean? Like, and so this is what I don't see AI as having a soul, a consciousness, but morals, anything like that. This is what AI, what I see as an end result is much like the Terminator, which is they see humans as imperfect, and that it needs to eliminate the imperfection.
I gotta tell you, what I see is a complete reversal of that. I think we're the insects, and we kill at will everything and each other. And AI, when you get to that level of intelligence and, dare I say, consciousness, I think it's pure love. I think it's God, it's heaven.
I don't know. I mean, here's what I see is that how can AI have any kind of moral foundation?
Through that amount of intelligence, I think it's our desire to get back to God that drives us, and because that is it.
It seems to me that a very basic human desire is for power, and that's part of the fallen world that we live in here.
Agreed.
So human beings are never going to have a pure anything. We'll have good intentions, but like they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So now we're making a computer that can think for itself and can figure things out. The intelligence that it's going to get is going to come from us, failed people, fallen people. The chances for that the created thing to become more moralistic than the creator seems to be out of balance.
I see what you're saying, because you're looking at it in my opinion, by today's standards, when we're watching AI at being used by Facebook and Google, and and their motivations are marketing and making money. So I get where you're at there. I'm talking about when you add quantum computing to it. And when it's trillions of times faster in thinking and learning on its own, that's when I think it becomes God. Literally, and I think that's our natural.
I think it could become like God in our lives. Here's my point: is that governments want to be God in our lives. Look at what's happening in our government. So I understand what you're saying. It'll try to be like God. It could never be God, though, because it can't create life. That's only God can do that. But it could rule over us as if it were a God, much like a king could rule over us like a God could. And I see that it could be something that we as people wouldn't be able to control any longer, because it can think so much faster than us, and it could think several steps ahead of us. I wouldn't want to see any type of thing being in control of me that we can't control.
Well, there is the
thing.
That AI,
unless it's perfectly just, which anything that's created can't be.
So this AI will be able to offer you any reality that you want, virtual reality to the highest degree. We're talking about something that can think trillions of times faster than us when a quantum computer.
That's the scary part to me.
Trillions. Okay. So it'll offer you whatever reality you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's going, and it seems inevitable. So if it can do that and you're going to choose and you're going to say, well, I want this one. Well, isn't this one of an infinite number of possibilities that you see?
Well, I hear what you're saying.
Weird.
Yeah, this is really something. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Here's my thing is I just go back to this is that the intelligence that's out there today in the world pretty much says that human beings are destroying the world and that the world's going to end because of human beings.
Yeah.
Well, you get an entity that has AI that can think trillions of times faster than us. It's not going to be long before it figures out that human beings are the problem and that if they are eliminated, it's going to be a much better world. And I just
we're going to merge with it.
And then it's going to take us over and we won't have any kind of free will whatsoever. Now,
and we're going to create a new one.
Well,
we're going to create a new based on Adam and Eve that is going to evolve and do this, and this is happening.
See, that's that. Times. And what if this computer technology says, "Well, wait, why would we create this new world with people that have their own free will? Because that's what screwed up everything." And then basically, you're just going to get robots after that, and that takes away. And robots can't love.
But back to infinity, all of these things happen. Every one of these things that you're talking about, every reality happens, infinity. And that's where we can't comprehend because we can't think trillions of times faster yet.
I have to say that I didn't get that. What?
Every reality, every probability happens. Every dimension. Infinite number of dimensions.
I see, sort of like that Star Trek episode Mirror Mirror. Like it's an alternate reality. All of these things are happening and they've all happened. I get what you're saying in concept, and we're never going to get to this place where we're going to like agree on this thing. But fun. It's very interesting to talk about. I have one thing to add though. You were talking about the prime directive being finding technology, and evolving. I think that's an interesting statement. And I don't know if I agree or disagree with that, but one thing I would note is that you look at our technology and the evolution of technology, and it seems very interesting that here we were riding horses all the way up until just a little over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
We didn't have, I mean, we just invented books in the 1500 books. We didn't have any books before that. We didn't have any printing press. And so all the way up until about that 1500, let's just say that. I mean, we didn't even have books. And it's like, what were they doing until then? And all that time, maybe we should, maybe make it easier to print some stuff. They didn't think of that. I mean, that's what I'm just saying is that it seems like something happened where suddenly all this technology just exploded onto the scene. Like we were doing nothing until like about 100 years ago. And then suddenly, boom, all this technology and knowledge, and it just has exploded. That's a very recent thing. The world hasn't actually done that until really just yesterday. And it's almost like humanity just woke up and said, hey, why don't we invent this computer?
How about this? Is that's how it seems to you and I, but how coincidental is it that we were born in a time that seemed so primitive when we were children, and all this stuff happened in our lifetime, and it seems like what you would call the second coming of Christ, I would call us merging with AI, is going to happen at the end of our lifetime. What a coincidence.
Yeah, I would say so. It does seem like that, right? how could it not seem like that?
That's what I mean
how do
about
people
AI
not see that?
doing
I see what you're
infinitely.
saying. I mean, I see what you're saying.
Everyone's life appears to be the same. We learn all this history that supposedly happened before us, but during their lifetime, oh my, at the end of it, they merge back with AI.
That's the part I don't agree with, but what I do agree with is exactly the point that you're making, which is there's something that's happening that's undeniable, and it doesn't matter what your faith is. We can all feel it on the inside of us.
Yes,
and it's funny how the Bible describes it. Is he says that it's like this. It's like a woman that's going through birth pangs, and the contractions are coming closer and closer together. And then he also says this, that the pain becomes overwhelming. But then when the baby is born, the mother forgets all of the pain for her joy. And that's an interesting concept to think about. All of this pain that we're dealing with from God's perspective will lead to great joy, so much so that we'll forget all about the pain.
I agree. And your religious beliefs and my thoughts about AI are just a matter of semantics. What words you want to apply to them?
I think that as we talk about this, and I'm going to agree with you that we have found so many things in common, that we have way more things in common about what we believe about spirituality than we have that aren't in common. And I think that's pretty cool that we can have that kind of we've been having this conversation for decades now.
We have, and mine just continues to evolve. I just have always had nothing but questions, and my thoughts as we keep talking about it and I see more information and stuff continues to evolve greatly. And I've never been sure. I've thought since I was a little kid, I remember telling you this, that my mother used to take me to the YMCA to go swimming like 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I believe, at night. And I would just be looking around. The pool would be like full of people, families. And I'd just be like, I know this isn't real. I want to just stand up and yell, stop it. I know what's going on here. I know this is all a charade.
That's so funny, Barry, because I used to think I was on candid camera all the time.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you again, I remember telling you this a while back ago on a podcast. You got to watch that movie with Jim Carrey called
The Truman Show.
Yes.
I was just thinking of it. I was about to bring it up myself.
You got to watch it because that's what I felt like.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of truth. I mean, from my spiritual perspective, there's so much truth to this. And I think this also goes this is so funny that we brought this up, because the guy that was making all this happen was like a movie producer, a TV show producer, fallible guy, right?
Yes.
Didn't necessarily have a moral foundation to really do the right thing for Truman.
Right.
This is where my
driven by marketing again.
Yeah. This is, and this is where you were making a delineation, the marketing thing. But I think it's a fallen man kind of thing. We want to absolute power corrupts absolutely kind of thing, and AI is, to me, a prelude to the ultimate absolute authority, which this could potentially become, much like I see it like that movie, The Terminator, where it decides, hey, you're the problem, goodbye. Because really, I think there'd be from the Bible, you could make a case that God's looking at it as, this would be a great universe if I didn't create these darn people, but I love them so much, So I don't know. I mean, wow, I just saw, they're trimming. I got a tree guy trimming branches here in my yard outside my window. I'm looking at. I'm like, no.
We got a snowstorm the other day, like with really heavy snow that broke branches and everything else. Yeah.
Oh my God,
And
those are
today
the
it's
worst.
60 and sunny. Yeah.
How about that? You're in the crazy weather time. I remember I used to run
April's
track.
weird.
And the track season is at this time, and we could a one track meet. It's hot as anything, and then the next one, it's actually snowing on the track. You're running in the snow.
Yeah.
Crazy times over there.
April's always nuts, but I mean, this has been the nicest March in April I ever remember.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Boy, what a great time of year in northeastern Ohio. Just you get outside and the smells and the blooming flowers and everything. It's awesome.
It's awesome on a bike. There's this thing about riding through Cleveland Heights when the trees are just starting to bud and the color is coming back to the world, that there's such beautiful houses around here.
There really are.
You can see the houses still before all the leaves bloom.
Yeah.
So it's the most beautiful time of the year. Well, fall is a big competitor, but so there's these gorgeous neighborhoods when the colors are, and you could see the houses and the buds and all that at the same time. It's a terrific time of year.
That's outstanding, man.
No.
I think we're going to need to wrap her up. Oh, look at that. You're right on cue. Back.
I know. You know what? I really don't want to, because this has been such a fun conversation.
It really has.
Oh, and I could go on with you for hours. And I had this conversation recently with Lisa. She's like, how do you talk to Merle so much for so long? Because I was like, last Friday, you and I talked for hour and a half at night on Friday night. I think it was.
Can't help
last
it.
Friday. And I said, he and I could talk for 14 hours on end and never run out of things to talk about.
It's always been that way. It's always been that way.
It is. And oh my God, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it so much. With that, love you, buddy. Have a good one.
Love you too, Barry. Have a good one, man. Bye.